Hello, and welcome to Michell Consulting's webinar series for our Michell University. Today we're going to be working with SAP Business One, and we're going to talk about some new functionality that's available in the version 9.0. Today we're going to discuss the inventory counting process in SAP Business One. This is nice. This is a new feature in the 9.0 version. This allows us an enhancement on the standard SAP. On standard SAP, before we had just cycle count recommendations, and that was about it. But now we can actually take that a step further. We can take those cycle count recommendations, and then we can attach them to different types of how we want to run our inventory and how we want to count our inventory. Basically, inventory counting is used in most companies. Usually at the end of the year, they'll do a general count of the entire inventory. You can also do it throughout different times. Sometimes people have what they call high-moving or fast-moving items, things that sell a lot, so we want to check that and so on. So let's go through, and again, we're going to be using SAP version 9.0 for today's demonstration. And by the way, this is being recorded. This will be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this, plus the others in our training series. So let's talk about some setup in the system for this. So we're going to go into administration. We're going to go into inventory, setup, inventory. And you'll see here we now have the inventory cycles as well as the cycle count and determination. So here we're going to open up our inventory cycles. And what we can do here is we can define different cycles. I have a couple here set up, which I'll be using for today's demonstration. So we have a code here called annual. You can also see here we have a code called fast moving. So again, we can determine how we want to set this up. For example, this is going to occur every week. It's going to repeat every week. So we're going to do it weekly. If you want to do it every other week, you would set this to 2 and so on. And this is going to run on every Monday. For today, we're going to use this one here, the annual. And again, you can create these. So for example, here's an annual one. You can set the recurrence. So the recurrence can be daily, weekly, monthly, and annual. And again, you can put none if you just want to do kind of a one-time thing. Obviously, when you select it, here you have the repeat. So for example, if you want to do it once a quarter, you would select monthly and select 3 and just start on January 1. If you want to do every 3 days, you would select daily and repeat every 3rd day and so on. So here we have it set up. Again, we're going to run it on today's date, so you can see we have it set up here. And again, you can have this set up when you want to start. You can actually even execute a time of day. And here you can determine how long it's going to go. So for example, we have no end date, so this is just going to be something that's going to run every year. Until we decide to stop it ourselves. You can actually set this up, and you can do after so many occurrences. So if you were to do this, say, weekly, and you set 6, after 6 weeks it's going to stop, or you can just stop it here by selecting a specific date. Again, we're going to leave it like this. So this is the cycle code setup. This is the first step in the process. We create our different cycle code setups. Then what we do is we have our cycle count determination. And what this does, it allows us to break down by warehouse. Again, a nice feature now is we can set this by warehouse. So maybe in the general warehouse, we may count a lot more than, say, the West Coast. And we don't do any counting in the consignment warehouse. So we can set these up by groups. You'll also notice in the warehouse, the cycle by, you have 2 options. You can cycle by item group or bins and zones. This is a feature that's also available in the SAP Business One 9.0 version. They now have bin locations set up within the system. We do have we'll be having a detailed webinar on setting up bins and the bin process, so we're not going to cover too much of that today. But the nice thing about you can create bins, you can see here that I have bins established for my warehouse 1, so I get the choice. If I was to go into warehouse 2, and I hit the drop down, all I get is item group because that's my default item group. But what I've done is I've taken it, if I have bins, I can take it a step further and do it by bin. So again, we may want to just count item groups. We want to count specific bins. So let's look here. So we're going to say warehouse 1 is going to be set up. We're just going to double click on the line. And here we're going to open up the cycle count determination setup. So again, we selected item group. These are my item groups that are defined in SAP in our items. So we're going to say we want to take the IBM printers, and we're going to link that to our cycle code. So again, we're going to use our annual cycle code here. And it's nice, you can actually set it to do an alert. I set this up for an alert, and what it's going to do, you can see here, I already have alert in the system. I purposely set this up for the demo, but when you do this, you alert. So if you want to say, for example, you want to do all the HB printers on the fast mover, which is a weekly, what it'll do is it'll give you an alert every time it's due. So that's the setup. So let's just recap that setup real quick and see what we've got. So we need to go into administration, setup. Under inventory, we need to go into the inventory cycles, define our cycles. So here we have it here. And once we define our cycles, we have to link those cycles via warehouse to an item group or bin. So that's our setup. So now, if you notice, what happens is I have an alert. So if I open up my alert, you can see that it tells me the stock taken. So I can actually do the count right from here. This is also nice. You can see here that I selected, remember the item group IBM printers and my warehouse 01. If you look here, let's just open up an item, and you can see here the item groups. So those are the item groups that we saw in the other setup. So again, we had that HP printers, we have the IBM printer. So we actually have 3 items that are defined to that item group. So we can see here, we can run all these, or we can select just the ones we want. I'm going to go ahead and let's select all of them here. So I have our 3, and then here we can actually just click and create our inventory count sheet. So we have some options on this inventory count sheet. Just make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. And again, we can select our day. Okay, we're just going to again default it to this day. It has a time. You can see my alerts coming up again. Let's close it. The account type, we can do a couple of things. We have the option here of doing a single count or validation count. We can just do single, where we're just going to go ahead and count it, and we're not going to really validate it against anything else, any items. Or we can do the validation account too. Again, what it's going to do is it's going to make some changes to it by validating it. Or we can do a single count. You can see here what it's doing here. It's setting up the validation. And what the validation does is allows us to select more than one user. So if you go back to single, this just means I'm doing one person is going to count it. I can choose 2 people. So if I was going to do a single count, let's just say myself, the manager, Jason, is going to do the count. But what I want to do is to make sure I don't make a mistake, I want to have 2 people count it. I'm going to count it, and someone else is going to come behind me and count it. So that's going to be the validation. So that's going to allow us to actually enter the 2 and to make sure we didn't make a mistake or we didn't have any problems. So here we're going to go into the validation mode, and you can see now I have my 2 users. If I go into single mode, and again it's asking me which counter to select, I'm just going to count the first one. You have just this one here. You notice it's all set. You don't really have the 2 users. But if I go into validation mode, again, I'm going to select, let's say, I'm going to use Jason, and then here, I'm going to select another user. And let's take somebody here. Let's take Fred Buyer, the purchaser. So we're going to have the both of us. So you can now see we have counter 1 and the counter 2. So both of us can now actually do the count. We can enter both our count sheets, and we can compare these to make sure that we're okay. Another thing we can do here, we have the option of doing a freeze. What the freezing does is that it's going to block this item from actually being anything happen to the item. When I freeze the item for account purposes, what it's going to do here, it's going to allow me to go in and I can't sell the item or purchase or do anything with the item itself. So let's just go here and set up my item freeze. Just make sure I have that open. So it's not going to let me freeze the items, but here we can actually go in and freeze the items. What that allow me to do is just go in and not have anybody sell or purchase the items in the system. So here we can also add additional items if you want. We can select various items. Again, we can add those items to the system. You can also see here that these items in Warehouse 1 have bins. So we can select a specific bin if we want. Okay. We can also go ahead and enter information here. So let's just go ahead and let's just add this counting sheet. So we have the warehouse bin, so we're just going to go ahead and cancel this. Let's do it again. Let's do a stock taking. So let's do it on warehouse number 2 because we have bins set up. And we'll want to go to the bins next time we go through it. So let's go back to our administration. Let's go to setup, inventory. And here we have our cycle counts again. We saw that. We're just going to go here to the cycle count determination. We're going to click on warehouse 2. We're going to do the same thing. We're going to set up an alert. I'm going to click update. So now we have the information set up this way, so we can actually go in and set up our stock taking requirements. And we're going to actually go select our warehouse 2. We're just going to go ahead for now and do it this way. We're just going to alter our warehouse in our code. We'll just wait for that to come up. We can actually select that. And what this is going to do, again, is going to allow me to do with the bins and so on. So let's go here again. We'll just do this here in validation mode. And again, we will select our 2 employees here. Let's just pick Fred again. Okay, there we go. We can see we have our alert coming up here. So we have it in location 2. Let's just select this one. Select 1. And again, we'll go through our same process. You can see the bin is grayed out. I want to go ahead and use this one. Not to confuse you with the bin setup. We do have a lot of bins set up in here. And here we can freeze. All right? So we have the option of freezing. We don't have any bins set up in this warehouse. So we're going to do that. We're going to go ahead and we're going to click Add. So we're going to create account sheet number 1. We're going to add the account sheet. Right. So here we can actually look at the account sheet. We can actually do a preview of what the account sheet will look like for printing. And we can do a couple things. We can show the inventory quantity that's in, you see here. Again, this is sometimes used for different reasons. I may want to do this for, let's say, Jason, he's the manager. As I'm counting, I want to see it, but typically what we do when we do counts, we like to hide the quantities. This is because what happens is you have somebody counting in the warehouse, and they'll see 140 here as the inventory, so they may just write down on the count sheet 140, not to have to count it. So this way we can leave it blank. You can actually have the two different counters here, or you can do them both. So let's take a look at how some of these reports work. And we can see them in our system. We can open up again. We have a crystal report. You can see here what we did is we have, again, OEC computers. We have the item. We have the count number 1. We have the warehouse. Here we have the warehouse quantity, and we have for the 2 takers. Again, we did both, so we see the 2 takers here. Okay, and we have for signatures. Again, we can drill into the documents here with the links. That's a new functionality. It was in SAP, actually version 8. They incorporated crystals, so you can drill directly into the crystal reports. We can also go here and let's do a preview. So let's hide the quantities, and let's just do it again for count number 1. Let's do count number 2, because we're going to give it to Fred to count without the quantities. So you can see Fred has the sheet without the quantities, because we want him to count without knowing what's going on. So we can print that for him. Then I can come back for me as the manager, Jason. I want to print one for me, and I want to show the quantities. This way I get to see the quantity while I am counting. You can see the quantity, and again the count and the person here. And it tells you it's 2 takers. So the good thing about this is that once we do this, we can then go ahead and we can add our counts in the system, and we can verify those 2 against each other. So you can see here, we can do that, and then we can go ahead and enter the information here. So we print our count sheets, so let's just say okay to this, and again, we can adjust anything, adjust the quantities counted, and so on. So let's say we go and we count. So we're going to click here, and we're going to go do our count. So let's cancel this. So we printed our reports. So now let's go into inventory. Let's go to inventory transactions. And now in inventory transactions, we have the inventory counting transactions. And you can see the inventory counting, which we can go select the one here, which we saw. So we can say this is counted. And here we can put our count. So let's say that I counted, let's say 138, okay, and Fred counted 140. So you can see right now there's a difference. So when I update this, what it's going to do, it's going to put this in red, because again, this is the validation. It's saying, oh, we have a difference between the 2 counts. Let's say that we went back and Fred was correct. He did count 140. Or actually, let's do the 138 difference. Actually, we counted 138. So Fred made a mistake. So we want to adjust the quantities as counted. Okay. So here we can copy the warehouse quantities on the count. We can do it that way. So what we've done is we've actually put them together, or what we can do is set as not counted and count it again. We're just going to go here, and just going to, for purposes, we're going to just say 138 and 138. And again, once I update, you'll see the red goes away because we just want those 2 to be validated. So again, any problems, we can go back and do it. So here now we're done. So we can also, if there's any discrepancies, when we copy to the posting, we can do the same thing. We can items with counted with 0 difference. All right. We can do count 1 or count 2. So these are different ways of bringing the data over into the actual posting. So here we're going to go, let's say we're just going to take counter 1 because they're the same. And now we have our inventory posting. Again, the nice thing about our inventory posting, this is a functionality that we have. So we can do it this way. We can bring it in, and you can see the variance. We can also, like with standard SAP in our documents, we can do a copy to and copy from. So we can also copy from account sheet from this. So we can do it, let's say, this way, where what we did is we did all the count sheets, and then we copied from. Another thing we can do is we can verify the count sheets. We're okay with the count sheets. This is count sheet number 1. We can click OK because we're done. And now afterwards, we'll want to go post. So here we can go into the inventory posting. And again, we can do a copy from, and we can select it that way. So again, it's how you want to do it. We can use the draw wizard, again, just like we have in other marketing documents, just like we're taking sales orders and copying to deliveries, we can do the same process. Again, the advantage of the two is the copy to is a one-to-one relationship. So when I was in the count sheet and I copy to the posting, everything's going to come over. The copy from is allows me to select specific items, again, and I can draw all or I can customize. So if I was to do this and customize, you'll see I get that next. If I was to draw all counted, it's just going to bring everything in. So let's just, we can't do a customize, we only have one item, but again, we can make any changes to the items. So you can see here what we've got. We've got our variance, we've got our posting. So now we're ready to add. We're going to go ahead and add this right here. Again, like all the documents in SAP, once we add, we can't make any changes because we're affecting costing and general ledger and so on. So you can see here, we just went ahead and we add it. If we go back and take a look at it, we can see here now we have an inventory posting and we have a journal remark. So you can see what happens here. Again, you'll notice here that we have, again, the link to it, the inventory posting. So what we did, we counted 138. Okay, we had a variance. We have a price here of 342. So 2 times the 342 is the 685. So you can see here that that's our effect. Okay, since we brought it down, we need to credit. And here we went in and we did the update. So let's go ahead and kind of review what we did. We have this new functionality here for stock taking, which we can tie to an alert. As you saw, we can have the alert. And what happens is once we do the alert, we can pull from the alert, or we can go into the inventory itself, inventory transactions, and we have this new feature called inventory counting transactions. So here we can go into the inventory counting this way. Again, we can just do add items. We can use our alert, which brings everything over, or we can just create one on our own. Again, we can add items here. So let's just say we're going to, again, select, we don't want to select warehouse 1 because we have the bin set up. So again, we're going to go here. We're going to just select, let's say, this item here. Okay, this item here. So we can actually do it this way. Same principle. What we're going to do is we're going to bring the information in this way, just like we saw from the alert. We can do it, or we can just set it up this way. Here you can adjust the counted quantities. Okay, so you can copy what's in the warehouses. For set as not counted, we can do the switch. So again, we can just click this right here. It's just going to do the whole thing. Okay, because we're okay on that item. We're good to go. Again, we're going to add this. It's going to create that count sheet. You can see here that we printed. And again, we have the option of copying this to posting. Let's actually change this. Let's say we went up, so we found an extra one, so we're going to count 76. Let's just update that. Again, we can do a copy to or a copy from. Let's just copy to and bring everything over. So again, you can see the variance. This time our variance is up which means we're going to add an item into inventory. So because we're adding an item, we're going to debit our inventory account for the 183 and credit the other account. So again, you can add items here as well. Let's just go ahead and add. So we go back and take a look at it. Look at our effective general ledger, as well as our, so you can see here how we debited the inventory account because we increased it. And we can see that we had 75, so now if we look in the item, we can see here we have 76. Okay, so that concludes our webinar today. We reviewed a new functionality in SAP Business One version 9.0 called the inventory counting. To review real quick, you can set that up. There's some new functionality in SAP. If you go into Administration and Set Up, under Inventory, we have this new functionality here for the inventory cycles. This was actually in the older SAPs, the cycles that you can create. But now, once you create the cycles, the new one is the cycle count determination. You can determine by warehouse how you want to cycle, and again, what groups, and attach the cycle code. You also have the alert. The alert's nice because the alert will actually take you to the second step. You can see here that we have alerts that are coming up. So you can just, from the alert, you can actually do the inventory counting right from the alert. If you don't want to do that, you can go into the inventory module itself. So we go to Inventory. Under Inventory Transactions, we now have a new submenu here called the Inventory Counting Transactions. And again, same thing here. We can actually go here. We can add our items. We can do it this way. So again, we would just do the same thing. We would say the item group this way, and we would say IBM printers. And again, you'll see we have that IBM printer in the warehouse, and you can see here that we can print our reports. Let's just add that. Let's call it back up. And again, you can determine if you want to do a single count, which is in this case just Jason's going to count it. You can also do a validation, which you're going to have two different people count. You can see the two counts here, count 1 and count 2. So again, we can say we just want to make sure that Jason's going to count, and we just want Fred to also count, just to verify, to make sure that we're okay, we don't have any problems. We can do that. We can also freeze the item. This is a new functionality. What freezing will do is will not allow any transactions from this item, which means we can't do any goods received, we can't do any deliveries, any adjustments. We're freezing this item until we're done. Once we're done, we can then do that. This way we keep integrity on what we're counting. So when we print the count sheet, we don't want to print the count sheet, have somebody do a delivery, do a receiving before we can actually enter our information. So again, once we do that, we can do it here. So we can freeze the item. Let's just say this was counted. And again, we can put our two different counts. So let's say Fred counted 76, and Fred counted 75. And again, you can see the difference here when I update. Again, I can change it. I can also copy this to an inventory posting. Again, because there's a difference, let's say I realize that mine was correct. There was 76 versus the 75. So we're going to take count number 1. You can see here it's going to come over with nothing. So since there's no change, there's no reason to do any posting. So if we were to select Fred's, and obviously we're going to generate because we have a difference. That's that you're getting here about the items account different than 0. Because you may want to do, in this case, if you do the accounts different from 0, then what's going to happen is you won't be able to bring stuff in that actually has a different amount. So let's just go ahead and select Fred's. Okay, because we actually have something here. Again, this is our posting. What we're going to do is we're going to do a posting just as similar to the goods issue, goods receipt that you had in the, which you still have in SAP. But again, we're just taking we know that this was done by a posting. And all we need to do is add it. Again, since we're posting, we cannot make any changes to the document, because what we're doing is we're affecting the quantity on hand, and we're affecting the inventory. So if you see right now, if you go here to the item, before I run this, you can see I have 76 in warehouse 2. After I run it, I'm going to have 75. I'm going to lose one of these. So there's my variance. I'm going to add this. I'm going to call it back up. You can see I counted 75. Now, if I go to my item, you can see I have 75. And again, you can see that concept of the bins, which we'll talk about in detail in another training session. That's why I'm using the warehouse 2. And because we had a variance, obviously we had money involved, so we lost one of these. So that's a loss of $183.98. So we need to reflect that in our general ledger for our inventory audit report. So we're going to go ahead and credit or reduce the value of my general ledger for inventory, and I'm going to debit my inventory variance account. Okay, so that concludes our webinar today on a new functionality in SAP Business One 9.0 called inventory counting. As we said, this webinar is being recorded. It'll be available on our website. You can visit us at www.michellgroup.com to view this in our training series. And once again, we thank you for your time.